Welcome back to season 3 of the Miscarriage Rebellion. A season where we look back at a decade of impact, a decade of showing up and making a difference for those going through the devastation of losing their baby during pregnancy. Prior to Pink Elephants, there was a lack of voice, there was a lack of any noise, there was a profound silence that surrounded the experience of miscarriage. And there was little to no support specific to the needs of miscarriage, early pregnancy loss, pregnancy after loss. I'm really excited to have with me today 2 very special people who've made a huge difference in Pink Elephants and who we are today. They are the people that really helped us to build the beginnings of peer support at Pink Elephants. So I have Terry Diamond with me and I have Maggie MacDonald. Terry really helped us in those early days when we decided we wanted to provide this one-on-one connection, but we weren't quite sure what that looked like. I didn't even know it was called peer support at the time. I just knew that that's what women needed. And Maggie was one of our very first peer support companions. Both have stayed involved with the organisation over the last decade. Both have been champions of making a difference and ensuring that no one goes through this journey alone. Both have actually already been on the podcast before. So if you want to go back and listen to their lived experiences, we will link to that in the show notes. But today we're going to talk about what it was like to build Pink Elephant's peer support programme and the growth of that programme and where we're at with it now. I might actually start with you, Terry, if that's all right. It feels quite natural.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. So with Pink Elephants, we first had that coffee, Max Brenner, Bondi.
Max Brenner, was it about 10, 11 years ago?
10, I think that one was, literally very beginning.
10 years ago now. And I think that was our first conversation around, for me, really acknowledging just how little support there was specifically dedicated to miscarriage. I'd worked at Red Nose, who was Sits and Kids at the time, and they had really focused a lot on stillbirth, neonatal death, SIDS, SUDI, and a little bit of miscarriage support. But I think I was so passionate about finding a place in the support community that really just spoke to miscarriage. And I think that's what you and Gabby came with. And when I met with the 2 of you and heard your story and how the 2 of you were so integral to each other in terms of the support that you provided each other, reflected back on my story and the lack of peer support that I had, and then the professional knowledge that I had now brought into the space. I was so excited and so passionate about building a peer support training program for you guys, and just cannot actually believe all these years later just how extensive that has now become and how much access people have had to the experience of having peer support.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, Gabby and I didn't even know that it was called peer support. We were just 2 women trying to start an organisation, trying to provide support. Gabby was my peer support, and like in hindsight, I can clearly see that now. She was the one that guided me in my depths of grief and my pregnancy after loss anxiety with Johnny. But we didn't know that was a label, but we knew we wanted to connect people. But we did know that we wanted to do everything with Pink Elephants with a really deep integrity and a place of listening. We'd already held focus groups before we reached out to you, and those focus groups had told us that, yes, they really wanted a connection to someone else who just got it, because there is a knowing in this space, particularly I think when miscarriage is something that isn't talked about with your friend circles. It might be a little bit more now, but 10 years ago it really wasn't. There was no common discourse. There was no language around the experience. It was still something that was seen as a secret, private women's business that you just got on with. And so it was really important to us that whilst we knew we wanted to provide connections, we knew that this organisation had a legacy and could go on for years and make a huge impact. So we had to connect with someone like yourself who could help us build that programme from the ground up with a really strong foundation, which has led us to where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you guys came to me, I then leaned on another colleague of mine who I'd worked with for years, and we had run training programs before, and we really looked at the essence of what we needed to, I guess, train people and teach people. And the biggest thing for me was always about ensuring that the people we were training were putting in place self-care strategies for themselves, and ensuring that people were at the right place in their journey to be able to become peer supporters and to take part in the training, really aware we didn't want to re-trigger anyone, and that when these peer supporters were going out to support the people in the community who were in the throes of their grief and losing their pregnancies, that they themselves were a little bit further away from their story so that they could be the right support to the, I guess, newly bereaved or the people who were in the trenches at the time, of them providing support. So we built what I'd like to think was a really robust training program. I know that we wanted to do some psychoeducational stuff within the program where we really looked at grief, the types of grief, disenfranchised grief, which really categorized for us what miscarriage was. We looked at lots of self-care strategies, and then we did some training exercises, giving the peer support trainees some scenarios that they may come across, and also just reinforcing for them that the role of a peer supporter was not to fix it. Peer supporters are not counsellors. You don't need to feel that you have this enormous responsibility, but that if they were themselves feeling compromised in the support that they were providing, they would then have an understanding of what was complex and where they could take that so that they were looking after themselves. Just recognizing that peer support is just about validation, listening, connecting, and giving the person who's having the miscarriages in the depths of their grief a place and a space that was not their friends, not their families, where they didn't need to feel burdensome in telling their story, to just have somebody say, I hear you, get you, I understand you, and from the depths of that shared lived experience, there's nothing quite like it, I don't think, in the support community.
No, there really isn't. And I want to acknowledge how much of that what you built in those early days still exist in training for our peer support companions now. We still give the grief literacy, and how empowering things like grief literacy is, even for peer support companions who may have gone through their journeys and no one's actually explained to them, actually, your grieving style might lean more towards instrumental. Mine, that's how Come Pink Elephants exist, right? And I know we can move between the two, but I think there was also a really unforeseen added benefit for the peer support companions themselves to process what had happened to them by giving support to others. And I know that we've got a poster coming out at an upcoming conference that will demonstrate that as well, but I do think that's really worth calling out, that everything that you put in place then still really stands now, and it's part of the values of the program, and I can't see it changing.
I love that. Makes me so happy. And we did it, creating the program was such a thorough and complex experience. It took us a long time to write that initial training program. We really wanted something that was going to stand up, and that incorporated the research, where we were at in terms of how important peer support was, but really we're quite passionate about training the peer supporters in a way that they did not feel overwhelmed, that they felt held and competent, delivering in a couple of days some competency training as well, so that when they were taking their first calls, it was done from a place where they felt that they were able to provide the support that the person on the other end of the line was seeking. So I'm so happy it's held up.
Yeah, it really, really has. I think that's a really nice segue as well, Maggie, to talk to you, because Maggie was one of our first peer support companions in that first group of training. You're still very much involved with the organisation now. What was it like for you becoming a peer support companion?
I think for me, I'm just listening to Terry speak, and I'm right back in that room. And in that first training, it was a very powerful experience for me. I think in that training, it was probably the first time that I had vocalized what I was feeling to a group of women who got it, who understood, and in a space where I felt safe and I felt supported. It was like a full circle moment for me. It still is now. I felt that I was where I needed to be. And I was being supported, and that I think for the first time I felt like, all of this grief and everything that came with, my pregnancy losses was leading to this moment. It really was a moment for me of like, this is where I need to be, and the purpose of what I had gone through. And we're never going to discount it and say, yes, it was meant to be, and all those, kind of things we tell tell ourselves. But it was definitely a moment of like, okay, something good can actually come out of all of this pain. And that has been something that I've carried with me all along through all of the kind of iterations of support that we've done over the years. And it's something that, you know, it was empowering. It was something that made me feel like, you know, I can actually, you know, live past this, you know, and I think that that's a lot of our peer support companions. We do speak about this, and it is absolutely something that has helped us with our own healing process, and it still does now.
Yeah, absolutely. And absolutely still hear that now from the existing peer support companions, the unexpected benefits of how they get the option to process what's happened to them as well. What were some of those early conversations like with women that you held space for?
I remember the training, and I remember doing role play that you were just talking about, and we were like, okay, we can do this, and it was, you know, we were groundbreaking because it hadn't been done before, and so it was, you know, like I felt very supported, and I felt like, okay, I can actually do this with the training that we had, but then, you know, that first phone call you make, and you don't know how is this going to go, and I think the main thing that I just kept reminding myself was like Terry was saying, we're not here to fix this because you can't fix it. All you can do is to hold space for the person that you're speaking to, and for, you know, and most of the time it was listening and letting, you know, them speak and letting them share and letting them, you know, kind of, well, not say download, but just have someone to listen to those things that I remember I couldn't say out loud to anyone when I went through my losses, because I felt embarrassed, I felt silly, I felt all of those things, you know, like we now say a loss is a loss is a loss, but, you know, you do feel when you're in a space where there are different types of pregnancy loss, you know, with early pregnancy loss, we can often feel like when our loss is not big enough to really be feeling these feelings. And I also remember just learning about the different types of grief and learning about, in our training, about complicated grief. And mine had actually become complicated grief because I didn't have the support that I needed straight after. I didn't even know there was someone like Terry who did, you know, support. I was like, what? This is amazing. But in that sense, you know, you kind of realize that, you know, if we were offering that support at an earlier stage and making it normal and taking away all that stigma, we wouldn't have, you know, we could limit the complicated grief that follows from not having that intervention or that support early on, which is the big thing for me, because, you know, you feel so invalidated that you just internalize everything, and then 6 months, 12 months down the line, you're like, I should be okay. But you're not, because there was not that support when you needed it. So that was something that really helped me as well in my own journey, because I realized that that is what I had been dealing with, and that there was nothing, I'm not going crazy. It's just because the support wasn't there when I needed it.
Yeah, and we see that from studies in the UK. Professor Tom Bourne studied women who had ectopic pregnancy loss, and a fifth were still symptomatic of PTSD 9 months after their loss experience. And for me, it's obvious, it's so clear that if we actually get better at providing early intervention support to validate the way that we're feeling, so that women are not isolated in shame, stigma, and internalizing all of these emotions, we can help them to process this in a healthy, grieving way. And it is natural to grieve the loss of your baby. Validate that, and we can hopefully reduce these outcomes. I think it also links really nicely back to something that I want you to touch on and explain a little bit more. What is disenfranchised grief?
So I think the essence of disenfranchised grief is where the person who's experienced it doesn't feel like they have permission to have that type of grief, because it is not validated by anybody else. So if somebody's dog dies and you say to someone, I'm really sad my dog died, that person can relate. They might have known the dog, met the dog. Imagine what it's like if they lost a dog, and, you know, I'm so sorry, and they can understand that you're upset. Somebody who's sick, somebody who's old. But when it comes to pregnancy loss, it's so quiet, it's so silent, it's so personal. And as I think something that Maggie said resonated, you know, especially early pregnancy loss, where you're expected to kind of just get up and move on from it. And you don't feel that if you actually shared the impact of what that had on you, that somebody would not think that you were crazy, that you were grieving the loss of a pregnancy that was, it was so early, or you can try again, or it's that 1 in 4, or, that actually losing that pregnancy was for you, losing that baby, and it actually had a huge impact on your life. But it's disenfranchised because there is nobody enfranchising the grief and giving you permission to experience and to feel it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think having peer support, I know that after one of my losses, I connected with the professional counsellor, and as part of her meeting her, she shared with me that she had had an experience of loss. I did not even want to hear about anything else. I just wanted her to talk to me about what she had been through, so that I knew that I was sitting with someone who knew what I was feeling, because to some extent I believe that she had experienced some of those feelings too. Just having that sense, that connection, that peer connection, and then having somebody say to you, I get it. I can only imagine what this is like, and not trying to platitude over the experience that you're having, and enfranchising your grief and understanding that this is a very normal reaction you're having to something really bad that's happened, and that is okay. It's okay to have that.
I think that's really important, and I feel like it's just something that, again, is still not talked about enough, about the experience of miscarriage. I know that we've shifted and things have moved, and we'll look back in a minute about that, but we really still do not know what to say to people so that we're not invalidating their experience. It's still one of our most downloaded resources as well. Use your words to try and find out, because we know that people do want to say the right thing, because there's more of an awareness now that there's wrong things, but they're still not sure. I think it'd be really powerful, because I know that what happens with this podcast is women that are in the trenches right now share it with their loved ones. So if you've got those loved ones listening, what should they be doing in terms of showing up for the person that's going through loss, and what should they be saying? Give that to both of you.
I think for me, it's just giving empathy. Showing up, it's not about you. And one of the things that I read and see, I moderate a lot of groups. I spend a lot of time in the space. I'm working in public health. I'm working in a women's hospital, supporting women who are experiencing early pregnancy loss. I do a lot of training for the midwives, the staff, the nursing staff, the theatre staff, in what they should say to somebody who might have just had a DNC or come in through EPAS experiencing early pregnancy loss. Just a lot of that. I'm sorry. I'm here for you. I'm sorry for your loss. It's so simple. I'm sorry for your loss. Sitting with the person and seeing where they want to take that. If they're crying, handing a tissue, not having a voice, it'll all be okay. You don't, that sense of being able to sit in the space, you don't have to fix it. But in terms of what can you do if you're a family, or a friend or a family, what I get a real sense of is that the person experiencing the loss, the grief, don't want somebody to say to them, let me know if there's anything I can do for you. They don't want to be having to make any more decisions or reaching out when they themselves are so vulnerable. But the support is a text message, I've just dropped a meal at your door. Or here's a $30 Uber Eats voucher, order yourself something for dinner tonight, you don't have to cook. Or dropping off a bunch of flowers, or just the doing, the holding, the drop off a bath bomb. Anything that the person doesn't have to come and reach out for support, that you are delivering that beautiful love and unconditional support without them having to identify what they need. Because I think when you've just lost a baby, when you've had a miscarriage, you're just identifying what you have to do by putting a foot in front of the other the next day. You know you want support, but you don't actually
Know what that is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. And that I think that, the just the basic, I am sorry for your loss. You don't need to be trying to fix the situation, because you can't. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's just being comfortable enough to say, I am sorry for your loss, which is what you would do for anyone else that is going through a loss. Like it's not different. This is a loss, So I think we are still very uncomfortable with grief as a society. We just, we try and move forward, but it's the reality of it. And like Terry said, like that kind of question, what can I do for you, is absolutely, it's basically just, sending the message and saying, I am thinking of you. You do not need to respond. I'm just letting you know, because I find like that's another thing. It's an extra thing. Like we're just trying to put one foot in front of the other to then feel like you've got to respond to all those messages back. That's a very simple thing. And, kind of I've also, one thing that I found was, enabling or like empowering your partner to be the one that answers text messages on your behalf, because it actually takes it out of your hands and it takes the emotion out of it as well. And put not a barrier, but put a little protection around you, not to have to be, like answering all those things back. And I think the other thing is also, knowing, I guess, that this person is really hurting, and that, you need to be maybe a little bit mindful around, I guess for me, the one thing that kept coming up in the peer support was, going to events and things like that. This is the main thing, and then having this plan in place. And instead of just going in blind, always set up a strategy. And it was just, this is what you're going to do, this is what you say, and often even typing those responses out in your phone, or having your partner have them ready so that you don't have to think about them in the moment. You just have them ready to go. And I find that's something that family members can also do and can have ready to, I guess, support that person going through the loss.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about responses, you're bringing up situations like when you're at a family barbecue and so-and-so's uncle says to you, so when are you going to start having a family then?
All those.
How about you two? You must be ready for a baby soon. And
Yeah.
you've just lost a baby.
Yeah.
Like finding the words to wrap around that in the moment. And I want to firstly state that they should not be asking, commenting on a woman and a partner's fertility, full stop. We need to stop those conversations. But sadly, they still happen. So you're right. Some of the advice that comes from some of our peer support companions is having a thought before you go to these things. If you are going to attend, like, have your wing person with you who can jump in for you and say different things at different points. Yeah. I also think there needs to be more permission slips around things like baby showers, christenings. I remember attending a baby shower. I was newly pregnant. I'd just had another loss, and it was my best friend's, and I felt like I had to show up. I spent most of it hiding in the toilet crying because I just wasn't ready to disclose to anyone that I was pregnant again, and terrified. And I was being really confronted by the fact that my friend's baby had carried on, and she was about to have her baby, and I'd lost a baby at around the same time in our first trimester together, and I shouldn't have gone. But back in, like, this would have been 2016. Back then, no one gave me a permission slip and said, don't go. So I went.
Yeah. And I think we looked at that in the peer training, didn't we? Actually, at what you can say to people to excuse yourselves from public situations that are too much in the moment, too overwhelming. Baby showers. Why are you going to a baby shower? Newly pregnant after having experienced a loss that would have seen you having a baby shower at the same time as your best friend. You don't have to do that. And I think, if the peer supporters are trained around that and they're like, yes, and then they can pass over that language, that permission to the person that they're supporting to look after themselves. It's like I'll often say to people, the worst thing has just happened to you. So what are you going to punish yourself extra by doing things that exacerbate the grief, your sadness, the way you're feeling? You're being punished enough right now. Like, it's like saying you've got a sunburn and let's, go sit out in the sun again. Why don't we just really fry ourselves? And it's the same with grief, And I guess where we come back to that disenfranchised is so often it's invisible unless there is that permission to say to uncle at the barbecue, we'd love to be pregnant now, we've just lost a baby. And again, if you're able to do that, that brings even more. We've come a long way in 10 years. Pink Elephants I love it. I'm so passionate about the organisation because I get to live through the sharing of the support in the work that I do now all the time. So I see the lived impact of being able to direct people to a website, to your resources, to the Facebook support groups, to the peer support. I actually get to do that all the time. And if it wasn't there, I can tell you what a hole there would be, because the amount of times that I am referring into the the service, there would be nothing else in its place that people can go to. So it's just filling this massive, massive gap that was there that isn't anymore because of pink elephants. We are much better, as you alluded to, than we were 10 years ago. We still have a long way to go.
Huge.
And it's having those conversations, I think, like Maggie was saying, and having the peer supporter empower the person who's in the trenches to change the discourse around it by feeling like they have permission, because it's validated, to own their grief, the experience they've just had, and to change the narrative of people and the understanding of what it is to have an invisible early pregnancy loss.
Yeah, 100%. And when you feel like you're strong enough to use your voice to share, then being able to share and having the language around it, because again, we've had no education, no discourse around this. We don't know what to say, how to say it. So by us empowering people with that, we get to change it for the future, right?
Yeah, and that's been, the way that we speak now. I remember, like not having the words for these things like disenfranchised, grief, all these words, like what are we even talking about? Like, but 10 years on, I think we have the language. We, like you said, we've still got a long way to go, but we have the language around that now, and it's easier for us to talk about it. We have situations now where we have peer support, like people that we've supported that have become peer support companions, and we've got this kind of full circle moment happening over and over. And, I think that's an amazing thing. I'm getting goosebumps, like just talking about it, because I just think, thinking back to that first training, and we were starting out and like, where would this go? We knew that there was a purpose behind this always, but to kind of look back to where we are now from there, it's quite, it's quite powerful. And yeah, it's an amazing thing to be part of, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really proud of where it's come, and I think the effort that we put in the beginning to underpin it with this like really strong foundations and actual training program. We talked about this a little bit off camera as well, Terry. Like, why didn't we just say, hey, if you want to be a peer support companion, jump online and chat to people?
I think it was so important to set this up right from the beginning, to empower the peer supporters to feel like they were being able to support people, and to ensure that they were at a place in their own story and journey that they were not going to be themselves easily re-triggered. Not to say that there wasn't the risk of that happening, but to be far away enough from their own personal story. So we looked at the criteria to become a peer support. So to either have completed your family, or to have, I think we said, to be at least a year from your last loss experience, so that when you were supporting somebody else, you could absolutely be there for them, and that you weren't still stuck in the trenches of your own grief. So having that acknowledgement, that you are your own story, but you need to be okay with your story before you can help others. And I think we really looked at the criteria, you, Gabby, and I, of who were we going to offer this training to, who were going to be ideal peer supporters, and how we were going to maximize the impact of support. I think we knew we wanted to roll this out everywhere, but that first one was just so integral and special, wasn't it, to handpick the people that were going to come and do the training. And it was the best weekend ever for me. I think that, we had the most incredible time, being able to really build that training. And I think we tweaked it a little bit afterwards as well, based on the things that we had learnt in that room at the time. When we wrote the program, we looked at evidence around peer support. We really provided researched and information. We collaborated to actually make sure that the training program stood the test of time, that it was robust, that we were not just pulling something out of the air and sending people off to do their very best job that they could. And again, what came back to me, and I'm sure that this has gone through the last however many years, 8, 9, 10 years that you've been running it, is just how much we wanted to look after the peer support person as well. And I think that really for me underpinned the success, I guess, of your peer support program.
And I think some of our peer support companions might actually listen to this episode, and my absolute only WhatsApp group that I is my peer support companion group. It is genuinely the most beautiful group of women who not only are offering this support to other people, but they're in it together for each other. They're continuously offering support. As an organisation now, we also have a paid volunteer coordinator. We've never had that before. We've now got a service delivery manager. Shout out to Sophie. And the organisation's grown around this programme, and there has been slight iterations of it and changes based on need of what the community needs, but also what the peer support companion needs and how we can scale this. And all those things have been really measured and considered, and you put that in place for us from the beginning. So it's been an absolute pleasure to watch this programme grow. And I also think it's a testament to us receiving government funding for this programme because of the time we took to establish it properly. And even now, it's not like we're supporting thousands of women each week through this programme. We're talking less than a few hundred. And that's because we're taking a slow and measured approach to growing our peer support companions, because we want them to feel like a family to each other. They need that support network for each other. But also we want to make sure that there is a governance structure in place for the safety of everyone that's accessing support through Pink Elephants. And that's integral to our values of who we are, because I don't want anyone to receive misinformation, like someone who's trying to counsel them, who should, like you said, this is not a counselling program. This is not where we offer things like CBT or anything like that at all. It is really validation, empathy and connection at the beginning of it. So yeah, it's come on a long way, but arguably from some really strong foundations. I want to look back a little bit now and see some of the changes that you've seen with the discourse around miscarriage and pregnancy loss in general society in the last 10 years, and also look forward and think about some of the hopes that you might have for how this might change in the future. I might start with you, Maggie.
Ooh.
It's a big question.
It's a big question. I obviously as someone who's walked this journey, I feel confident and comfortable in, using our words and being, very vocal and kind of open about this, this experience and about the support that I have received through Pink Elephants, as well as being a peer support companion. It has been something that has been very instrumental in my journey and healing as well. I think this is a funny one, my son, but the first big thing for me was that my son was in the SRC in primary school. He's 17 now, but I think he was maybe maybe 7, and he wanted to raise money for Pink Elephants. I remember this yesterday, and it was a tiny little thing of, I'm like, this is amazing. I'm not sure how, this is going to go at your SRC, but, and then having this child, be able to speak about miscarriage, as a 17-year-old, and that's not something that is at all for him, something that's not okay to talk about, which is to me a small personal thing that is very important. But I guess also just the reach that we've had, through social media and through everything that we've been doing, just opening that discussion, and having discussions in workplaces and having referrals come back, and having even something small like my husband, at work, and someone, one of his staff members' wife was going through a loss, and straight away had gone and said, this person's struggling, can you please direct them, so those things are it may seem small, but just the fact that people know that we are there and that we are where you go to get the support, for me that's a really, really big step forward.
100%. And I'd argue they're not small. I often get asked what my proudest moments at Pink Elephants are, and everyone expects me to say lethal loss, legislation change, policy change, all that. And absolutely incredibly proud of that, and it's a massive legacy. But my proudest moments often come in those quiet moments that you talked about, when you meet someone who you find out access support through Pink Elephants, and I had no idea at the time because I'm no longer in the support in that way, and that we made that difference, that we were the ones that they then felt brave enough to try and conceive again. Because you know how difficult that is, to literally go into another pregnancy. You're rolling the dice with your heart. You're wondering whether you're going to get another miscarriage or whether you're going to get to keep this baby. That's so hard. And then to walk the journey of pregnancy after loss. But we hold their hand the whole way through that. And they feel like they can go through that challenge because they're supported. And I just... they're the wins, right? They're the small one-on-one. That's why we exist. That's why we started. So I think being able to empower your son, your husband, to have literacy and language around this, so that they're helping other people find that one-on-one support. That's profound.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, the changes from when I experienced my losses 20 plus years ago, into the next decade, and now the decade that we've had the Pink Elephant support, the changes are profound. I think you have so much to be so very proud of, in building this organisation. And really it is that empowering, it's that validation, it's taking something that is so commonplace that happens to, 1 in 4 pregnancies end in miscarriage. There are, a world of women, and to go, this happens, and this is a way that we respond to it, and to have the language, the discourse, the support, to have it backed up with all the resources that we have. I feel like an absolute hero in the work I do, because I know that I've got something to refer to people to that's going to provide them with the support, that I trust, that I respect, that I think is so incredibly targeted and accurate, and just unbelievable resources. And the future I just see in, my hope is that in 10 years' time, we have just continued to evolve, so that, where Maggie, I think, said before, it's better, but it's still not perfect where it is, but it's better than it was 10 years ago, and when you were experiencing your losses, that in 10 years' time we're having a conversation around the 20th anniversary of Pink Elephants, and reflecting back yet again on how much broader the understanding of pregnancy loss and the importance of support and that validation, empathy, connect has become in the next decade. I see only great positive things coming, to support women, and the losses are getting bigger and bigger. The more technology we have, the more genetics is improving, ultrasounds improving, the more people are getting to be able to make decisions for their babies, their pregnancies, their children. We are going to see a lot more early pregnancy loss, where maybe it's, more people are having a say in the kinds of lives they want their children and their families to live. And so I think we're just going to see pregnancy loss increase, rather than subside as time goes on.
Yeah, sadly, agree. And we've seen that already as well. And I think a lot of the termination for medical reasons, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll have another specialised area on our website specific to that need, and we'll also have peer support companions with that lived experience that we can optimally match people to as well, because that matters too, right? But sadly it is increasing, but then that just makes us stronger in delivering the change that we want to see, to ensure that no one goes through these experiences the way that the 3 of us did. We didn't get what we deserved or what we needed in our moment of need.
Yep.
But what I'm proud of most is that we're changing that for others.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.